After dozens died in Israeli jails, death penalty law rattles Palestinians. New law will execute Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Ramallah, West Bank. Dozens of Palestinian prisoners have died in Israeli prisons over the past 2.5 years, some during torture while others as a result of medical neglect by prison authorities, rights groups say. Now, Israel is making plans for the execution of possibly hundreds of Palestinian prisoners held on charges of fatal attacks against Israelis, according to an Israeli media report, under what legal experts have called racist legislation that has rattled the families of thousands of Palestinians in Israeli jails. Israel's Channel 13 reported last week that the Israeli Prison Service IPS has embarked on logistical preparations to implement a draft law, outlining plans for a dedicated facility to carry out any executions and to prepare and train staff to implement the punishment. The draft law calling for the execution of Palestinian prisoners convicted of killing Israelis passed the first reading in the Israeli parliament in November, amid controversy about what a Palestinian legal expert has described as apartheid legislation. An amended version of the bill is under discussion in a parliamentary committee in advance of 2 more readings before it is adopted into law, but no date has been set for a new vote. Israel's Channel 13 reported that under the plan, executions would be implemented within 90 days of the court ruling and that they would be carried out by hanging. It quoted sources as saying that death sentences would be carried out against elite members of Hamas, accused of involvement in the October 7, 2023 attack. Prisoners convicted of lethal attacks against Israelis in the occupied West Bank would later be subject to execution, it said. For the family of Arafat Mahmoud Abu Shaeira, who was serving a 28-year sentence following an armed clash with Israeli soldiers in 2006 in the West Bank city of Bethlehem, the report is most alarming. "I no longer sleep out of fear for Arafat," his mother, Rasmiyah, told Al Jazeera at her house in al-Azzeh refugee camp, also known as Beit Jibrin, in Bethlehem, referring to her 44-year-old son. Looking at a picture of Arafat, who is held at an Israeli prison in the Negev desert, she said that as if starvation, abuse and killing in jail were not enough, "We are now hearing news Israel has begun implementing the prisoner's execution law." The Palestinian Information Center has said that Arafat suffers chronic from pain as a result of bullet shrapnel still in his shoulder, back and hand after the clash. 2 of his comrades were killed in that incident. His family, who have not been able to visit him since Israel imposed a ban on family visits more than 2 years ago, says apart from his injuries, they are worried by information from lawyers and rights activists of severe abuse by prison guards and negligence by prison authorities. In a report published last November, Physicians for Human Rights in Israel (PHRI) said at least 94 Palestinian deaths in Israeli custody have been documented since October 2023. Israeli military prisons are responsible for at least 52 of the deaths, it said, while the remaining 42 were documented in facilities run by the IPS. Israel holds thousands of Palestinians in its prisons for attacks or simply for involvement in resisting the occupation, according to rights activists. Thousands more have been detained since the genocidal war on Gaza began following the October 7, 2023, cross-border raid led by Hamas on Israel that killed some 1,200 people. Israel has killed more than 70,000 Palestinians in Gaza, including more than 20,000 children. Hundreds of those prisoners could be subject to the death penalty if the law is implemented. A revised draft legislation is currently being debated in the National Security Committee in Parliament before being sent for a second and a third reading. The head of a Palestinian society that campaigns for the prisoners said Palestinian prisoners are already living in hell, and the law calling for the execution of prisoners represents a dangerous development. Escalation against prisoners has continued without pause over the past 2 years, culminating in what Israeli media announced regarding the imminent implementation of the execution law. Abdullah al-Zaghari, head of the Palestinian Prisoners Society in the occupied West Bank, told Al Jazeera. Talk of additional measures and preparations to hang prisoners from Gaza and the West Bank comes within a broader escalation that coincides with the ongoing war against the Palestinian people, including within prison walls, al-Zaghari said. He said all measures against prisoners introduced by Israel's far-right government after it took office 3 years ago were a violation of international law. Ramzi Odeh, professor of international law and head of the International Academic Campaign Against Occupation and Apartheid, said the proposed law constitutes apartheid legislation because it differentiates between Palestinians and non-Palestinians. An Israeli settler or soldier who kills a Palestinian is not subject to this law, he told Al Jazeera. They are tried under ordinary procedures, and the execution law is not applied to them. This is clear discrimination in punishment against Palestinians. Odeh said Israel has classified Palestinian detainees under what it calls the category of unlawful combatants, a designation that rights grow.